It says, YouTube says that I am live. It's Gordon Cossey, aka one of my users' name, a username I use in places like Twitter, Gordy Canuck. And I'm coming to you at 11:09 p.m. on Thursday, the 3rd of February, the day after Groundhog Day, which Groundhog Day, we all feel like one day is very much like the next. Things just keep repeating. Wanted to talk tonight about a few things, one of which being gaslighting, which, in all honesty, is a term that until I was probably about 45, actually sometime around the age of 40, that's the first time I heard the term. So it occurred to me that there may be other individuals who gaslighting. What's gaslighting? Possible. It's become very much more common, a more commonly used term than it was before, I believe. But if you don't know what gaslighting is, in a nutshell, it means basically when you're in a debate, when you're trying to argue a point, is to take the opposing view and the individual and try and make them feel crazy or stupid. And for those of us who haven't fallen into germaphobia and hypochondria and heightened levels of fear and anxiety, we've all been hit with something to the effect of, "Oh, so you want people to die? Is that what you want?" That sort of, and it's tough to. Of course, you don't want people to die. No one. It's a bullying tactic that's used by people who, in my opinion, are intellectually weak rather than ideas they want to attack. And so what I'm going to suggest is to throw it back. I'm not a big fan of fighting fire with fire. I like Mahatma Gandhi's old line, when you fight fire with fire, all you get is more fire. However, you can use it right back. You'll be talking to someone perhaps who's, all in on the mandates, all in on suspending our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our Constitution, even the rule of law. They're all in on it because they're afraid. So they support Justin Trudeau. And so you can throw it back on, "Oh, so you're with Justin Trudeau, Mr. Blackface, Mr. Racist Costume Guy. That's you're all on board with his agenda, eh? Okay, you're one of those, are you?" And I would suggest be ready. People get angry. They'll be, "No, I don't. I don't like Trudeau," but and they'll get all. You've got them on the defensive, and you can also bring it up with the masks. People, are they oh, see, you think sucking air through a piece of cloth is going to stop a microscopic aerosol that's probably less than a micron in size? Okay, why don't you wear one down a coal mine? Tell me how that works out for you, Einstein. You're special. Did you get your degree in mechanical engineering from Facebook? Have it right back at them. Another one that comes out a lot is basically similar in fashion, ad hominem attacks, where you don't attack the idea, you don't debate the idea, you don't discuss what the opinion or what's being presented, rather you attack the individual. We've seen a lot of this, like Pfizer's CEO, for example, is a veterinarian, and some people go, "Oh, a veterinarian," and they'll do it that way. But then there are individuals who are opposed to who are also veterinarians. So you can't pick and choose. But ad hominems are another bully tactic that are used to discredit individuals, rather than dealing with actual facts, actual ideas, actual opinions. Just attack the individual. And another one that's used a lot is guilt by association. I'm referencing it with Trudeau. Okay, so you're with our racist costume wearing, blackface Mr. Blackface, okay. Take everything associated with Trudeau. Mr. The budget will balance itself. How did that work out? Mr. We're never going to have another election. This is the last election of first past the post voting. Yeah, and trust everything he says. Yeah. Mr. What else? Big corporate, donor at SNC-Lavalin protecting, from when they were going up against prosecution. Mr. denigrating our native population. Thank you for your donation to a woman who paid $1,500 to confront him over the fact that he lied about solving the problem of mercury poisoning on the grassy hills, I think it is, or grassy knoll reserve up in northern Ontario. And anything Trudeau says, you've got tons of ammo there to, so you're with that guy. Not me. Yeah, but you gotta, and this is why I don't like politics coming into things, because, like, I'll give you an example. Donald Trump was down in, I don't know where, because I don't follow him, but it's impossible to miss. There's little clips everywhere on social media, and he was down in somewhere in the U.S. doing one of his rallies, and he voiced his support for the convoy in Ottawa. And I wish he'd shut up, because he's too polarizing a figure, like Justin Trudeau. I'd rather talk about facts, data. And one of the things that I'm finding distressing is a number of people who are suffering from what's obviously germaphobia and hypochondria, who are terrified at the prospect of going into a restaurant or a movie theater, or with someone who hasn't gotten the, and that's, genuinely, that's sad and depressing that someone's, to go back to the guilt by association, say, well, after your third one and after you get infected and have to isolate, you can go join Justin, and you can get dressed up in your racist costumes and put on your blackface and have fun together. Life has to get back to normal. So if you're able to get to Ottawa, and if you're not afraid of, if you're not a germaphobe, and if you're not a hypochondriac, and you want to see a restoration of the Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the rule of law. The rule of law has been broken in this country. Churches have had officials going in and interrupting church service, which violates Section 176 of the Criminal Code of Canada, something that was debated a number of years ago, about 5, 6, 7 years ago. They were talking about perhaps removing it, but they didn't. It's on the books. You can look it up. I believe it's Section 176, and it precludes anyone from going in, and any enforcement official from going in and interrupting a worship or other type of religious rite or ceremony, worship service. And yet this has happened in direct violation of Canada's criminal code. It's supposed to be, it's punishable on summary conviction by no less than, it can lead to incarceration for a period, I believe, not to exceed 2 years. So 1 year, 364 days would be the maximum sentence. And I believe there's also the potential for financial penalties as well. But we've suspended all our laws, everything is subordinate now to a virus. All you have to do is say, well, the virus, and okay, well, the law doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms doesn't matter. I'm not okay with that. Wearing my one of the PT shirts I used to have when I was in Valcartier. I'm not going to do this in French parce que y a trop de vocabulaire. But, if we unpack this from the beginning, when March of 2020 rolled around, the Imperial College of London came out with a report from what they called their coronavirus response team, and they had modeled what was going to happen in the very first year of COVID. And they modeled two countries. They modeled Great Britain and they modeled the United States. But they said that other countries, Western countries, could expect similar results proportionate to their populations. So for the United States, they were predicting between 1 and 2 million deaths as a direct result of COVID in the first 12 months. So the United States, 330 million, Canada, 38 million. It's not exactly a 1 to 10 ratio. We're, I think, 8.8, 8.9, but I'm going to call it 10 just to keep the math simple. So they were expecting 1 to 2 million deaths. So a commensurate level of mortality directly caused by COVID for Canada would have meant between 100 and 200,000 deaths. The difference is a wide variance. You know, Canada, 100,000, 200,000, that's a huge difference. It was dependent upon what they referred to in the report as non-pharmaceutical interventions, or NPIs for short. Euphemistically, we called them lockdowns. So if you lock down, 100,000 people will die as a direct result of COVID. If you don't lock down, if you just do things as normal, then 200,000 people are going to die. And as a direct result of COVID, not talking about someone in a long-term care home who's taking 10 medications and can't dress, feed, bathe, or toilet themselves. I'm talking about direct deaths. Now, give that some scope. In 2020, Canada was anticipated. UN actuarial tables predicted that Canada, per 1,000 of population, that we would have 7.803 deaths. That was a prediction made before COVID came along. And if you do the math on a population of 38 million, it comes out somewhere around 296 to 297,000. So in Canada, in the year 2020, before COVID came along, we were expected to have close to 300,000 deaths. And how many did we actually have in 2020? I invite you to look this up. You can look up the UN actuarial tables, find out, just do math. 7.803 times 38,000 will give you the expected rate of mortality that we were expected to have. As I say, it's 296, 297,000. I'm rounding up. I'm just saying close to 300,000. And how many deaths did we actually have in 2020? The numbers I've seen reported say that we came in just a little over 300,000 deaths. So was there some excess mortality, some excess death in 2020? Yes, there was. A few thousand, 3, 4, maybe 5,000 more people died than were expected to die. 800 people, even without COVID, 800 people in this country, Canada, die each and every day from all causes. Cancers, heart disease, upper and lower respiratory infections. I've looked at the StatScan data, and cancer is the number one killer, 80,000+ in and around that per year over the last 5 years. Heart disease, heart and cardiovascular diseases in and around the low 50s, and it's pretty constant. So, 800 people a day in Canada die, with or without COVID. And what happened in 2020 is we had a little bit of excess death in this country. Now, how much of that was related to COVID? How much wasn't? That's up for debate. I know that there was a report that came out that said 3,000 Canadians had died because of needed procedures, surgeries, what have you, having been indefinitely delayed. There was a tragic case of a gentleman in Alberta, concert musician, I believe a violinist, doesn't matter. This gentleman in his 40s, I don't know if he had a pacemaker or something. There was some procedure he needed to maintain his health, to maintain his life. but none of the hospitals would perform it because of the protocols that were in place at the time. And sadly, this gentleman, who was also a father, I believe, of 2 young daughters, passed away. So he didn't die of COVID. He died because of a response to COVID. If you look at the drug overdose deaths, they've gone through the roof. We had more people die in Canada of drug overdose in 2020 than we did of COVID. Now, would they all be alive? No. We have drug overdoses in this country every year, sadly. This was just the highest ever. So in 2021, I haven't seen the actual numbers yet, but the expected, again, before COVID, they published actuarial tables showing our Canada's expected death rate going forward in time before COVID. So for 2021, it was supposed to rise to 7.849. And it's going to keep climbing. As a matter of fact, by 2040 or 2050, it's supposed to be 10 per thousand of population, which is a significant jump from 7.8. It's a significant percentage jump. And the reason is simple. It's because of the baby boomer population that was born starting in 1946. I was born in 1966, so I'm not a boomer, but they're just in front of me. And so basically boomers right now are in their 60s and 70s. And our hospital system, our healthcare system, had been warned Canada-wide. They'd said, that when the baby boom generation starts getting into their 60s and 70s, our hospital system, our healthcare systems are going to be overwhelmed. They're not going to be able to deal with it. We need significant improvement, significant investments. We need to expand capacity. We need more beds. And as every Canadian knows who pays attention, repeatedly, what did our provincial governments, because health is typically a provincial responsibility, they were constantly talking about driving efficiencies. Well, we're driving efficiencies, which means doing more with less. And even before COVID came along in Ontario, we had hallway medicine. Brampton, before the pandemic, they declared one of their hospitals, or all, I don't know how many hospitals there are in Brampton. I think it's the 8th largest city in Canada, 400,000 people. And their city council declared a state of emergency before COVID because of having to cancel surgeries and how many beds were piled up, or how many people were piled up in the hallways. Hallway medicine. Remember, that was a campaign issue. I think it was I think the election was in 2019, the provincial election. No, it would have been 2018. In 2018, we had a provincial election, and Doug Ford and his Progressive Conservative Party ran on a platform of putting an end to hallway medicine. And interestingly enough, throughout 2020 and now 2021, and now we're into 2022, there have been no reports of hospitals being over capacity, whereas the CBC in January of 2020, before this hit, they looked at a 6-month period for a large number of hospitals that were basically in larger urban centers like Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, and they found that they were habitually almost all the time. They looked over a 6-month window and found there, over the 180 days or so, that they were over capacity 178 days, 175 days. Being over capacity was the norm. So Doug Ford did keep his campaign pledge to end hallway medicine, and all it took to do it was a global pandemic. Ironic. Anecdotally, I have a friend who had they scoped his knee, and he developed an infection, a post-op infection, and he had to go into the emergency room to have it dealt with. And he said he was amazed. He was in and out in record time. They saw him right away, took him right in, because the hospital was empty. This was not supposed to happen. When the Imperial College of London did its modeling that predicted what was going to happen in the first year, We were supposed to have between 100,000 and 200,000 deaths. So we locked down, everyone in Canada got locked down. So it was supposed to be 100,000 people dying, which would have meant total mortality for 2020 of close in and around the 400,000 mark. We didn't get anywhere close. The predictions were horribly wrong. They predicted this virus as having an exponentially higher rate, death rate than influenza. Anthony Fauci, I believe, I recall him saying that the fatality rate from COVID will be or is at least 10 times greater than that of influenza. And now we all know that's not true. Ontario Public Health, if you want to go check out their enhanced epidemiological summary, they give IFR, which is infection fatality rate broken down by age, 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and on up. And if you're under the age of 20, you got a 99.99% recovery rate. Like the IFR is like 0.00. Even if you're my age, I'm 55, the recovery rate's still better than 99%, and that's population wide. And by that, it includes everyone of all health conditions, all body types, because we know that obesity, diabetes, there are a lot of comorbidities that not everyone has. And, we've always had to deal with a degree of death. 800 people every day in Canada, with or without COVID, over 800, die each and every day. Do the math. 365 divided by 296, 297,000. In Ontario alone, 300 plus a day die. It's the first time we've ever counted deaths with something as opposed to what caused it. Imagine, if you will, if we hangnail. If we counted everyone who had a hangnail, which I don't, there's a little one. If we counted everyone who had a hangnail who died and said, well, that's a hangnail death, we'd have a hangnail epidemic going on in Canada. So droned on long enough. If you can get out to Ottawa, if you're not germaphobic, if you're not a hypochondriac, if you're not worried, and if you can get out to Ottawa. If you can't get out to Ottawa, maybe in your own town, there are a lot of, I think there are slow rolls. I'm hearing little mini convoys going around certain towns, and people are getting out on the street. And they're letting their friends and their neighbors and their fellow citizens know you don't have to be afraid. And don't be gaslit. Throw the gaslighting back. Oh, you're with Trudeau. You're with Mr. Blackface Turban racist get-up guy, Mr. Corruption. That's who you're with, eh? Or the masks. Oh, you really think sucking air through a piece of cloth is going to stop a microscopic aerosol? Well, good luck. I'll tell you what. Go put one of those on down in the coal mine. Tell me how it works out for you. Better yet, I invite you to do gas hut training with one on. You'd be crying. You'd be spitting up like crazy within seconds. Try and be kind. People are afraid, but anyone who's afraid, they always want others to share their fear. They want their fear justified. They want their fear rationalized. And the reason I like doing these videos is I don't see myself being represented by the media. The media, they like to engage in their own form of straw man. And a straw man argument, I'll wrap it up with this. A straw man argument is where you take your opponent's view and you make it into a straw man so you can light it on fire very easily. It burns to the ground in seconds. And you see this all the time, belittling someone else's argument and trying to make it appear incredibly weak. An example I would give was I saw a CBC News clip where a woman who to be kind. She's a very simple-minded individual. And she was in Ottawa, sitting in either the cab of a truck or in the seat of a vehicle. And they talked to her and put her on camera. And she said, "This is horrible. It has to stop. Facebook deleted my account." And so that's the straw man, taking someone with a very, someone not the greatest intellect in the world. Like I said, I don't want to be unkind, but then trying to then using that straw man to further go by guilt by association. Though, so you're with the woman who had her Facebook account deleted, who's all upset. Well, you can play it both ways. I would genuinely welcome the opportunity to talk to accredited people and to have a discussion. I have a family member who had me speak because of my hesitancy, wanted me to speak to a friend of his who's a molecular cardiologist, university professor, and I did. And I enumerated for him my concerns, and ultimately he respected my decision. Imagine that. He acknowledged that one of my issues is that how afraid is the squeeze worth the juice? There are risks. You can say the risk is small. Tell that to in myocarditis and pericarditis. Tell one of the kids in Ontario, there are hundreds of them who have had damaged hearts. Tell them, well, it's okay. It was a minor risk. It doesn't matter when it happens to you or a family member. So are the risks, how afraid of COVID should I be? And I'm not, as evidenced by the fact that going back to April of 2021, I've been gathering in large groups. I've been to church services in Peterborough, Waterloo, Aylmer, Democracy Fund, 800 plus people just this past December 7th. And I'm fine. What are the chances? And I share that publicly because if I don't share it publicly, it didn't happen. And so people feel, so I'm going to end it there. Have a good night. God bless.